She's using fake documents. My sister's voice cut through the security line like a blade dressed as concern, loud enough for every stranger near gate C14 to turn and stare. My name is Ren Castellane, I'm 29, and I remember thinking, how you rehearse a sentence like that and still call yourself family? The TSA officer's hand found my elbow before I'd even processed the words. Gentle, procedural, final. A supervisor was summoned. My passport disappeared into gloved hands while my sister stood at a safe distance, arms crossed, wearing the expression of someone who'd just done the hardest, most necessary thing in the world. The supervisor studied my photo, then my face, then my photo again. Something shifted behind his eyes. Wait, he said slowly. I know this last name. He didn't explain. He simply turned, phone already rising to his ear, murmuring words too low for me to catch, his gaze flicking back to me twice like he was confirming something he didn't quite believe yet. My sister's confidence hadn't wavered. Mine hadn't either, because unlike her, I knew exactly whose name I was carrying. The supervisor stepped away from the counter, phone pressed to his ear, and I watched my sister's certainty flicker for the first time. She hadn't expected a delay. She'd expected humiliation. Fast, public, irreversible. She wanted me detained, questioned, dragged somewhere with fluorescent lights while she flew to Denver without me, finally alone at our father's memorial, finally the only daughter standing at that podium. I understood that now, watching her check her boarding pass like it was a countdown. Ma'am. The supervisor returned, my passport in his hand, but not yet offered back. Your father, was his name Dr. Elias Castellane? Something cold moved through my chest. Yes. He treated my son. Years ago. Children's Hospital, the trial program. His voice dropped, almost reverent. That man saved his life. My sister's arms uncrossed slowly. I'm going to need a few more minutes, he continued, but not because anything's wrong. Because I want to do this right. He looked past me, directly at her. Who exactly filed this report? The line had gone quiet. Every stranger who'd stared now watched my sister instead. She didn't answer. I finally understood. She hadn't planned for anyone to remember our father's name. Only mine. The supervisor's radio crackled, and he stepped a few feet away to speak into it, leaving my sister and me suspended in a silence that neither of us had the courage to fill. I studied her, really studied her for the first time in months. Grief had thinned her face. Or maybe it wasn't grief. Maybe it was math. Our father's estate. The house in Sedona. The clinic he'd spent 30 years building. All of it waiting to be divided the moment his casket closed, and only one signature required to speed that process along. Mine, removed from the equation entirely. You could have just asked me not to come, I said quietly. Would you have listened? Her voice cracked on the second word, the first honest sound she'd made since we'd arrived at the airport. I don't know. You never gave me the chance. The supervisor returned before she could answer, my passport now extended toward me instead of held hostage. Everything checks out. I'm sorry for the delay, Ms. Castellane. My sister's mouth opened, some final protest rising, but he cut her off with a look I recognized from every hospital hallway I'd grown up in. I'd be careful, he told her, making accusations you can't take back. She said nothing, but her hands were shaking. We didn't speak again until we were both seated on the plane, 3 rows apart, close enough to feel each other's silence, but too far to bridge it. I stared out the window as the ground fell away, and I thought about the last real conversation I'd had with my sister, 8 months ago, in our father's kitchen, when he was still strong enough to cook for both of us. She'd asked him, casually, almost carelessly, what would happen to the clinic when the time came. He'd laughed it off. I hadn't laughed. I'd watched her face in that unguarded second, and something in me had filed the memory away, like evidence I hoped I'd never need. Now I needed it. Somewhere over Nevada, a flight attendant handed me a folded napkin with my water, Sedona General Hospital's letterhead barely visible beneath the ink, a habit of my father's, always writing on whatever paper was closest. I hadn't asked for this. I hadn't packed it, either. It must have slipped into my bag the last time I visited his office, waiting for the exact moment I'd need proof of something I didn't yet know I was gathering. Written in his shaking hand, "If anything happens to me, call Marguerite Voss first. Trust no one else with the will." My sister didn't know I had it. Marguerite Voss. I recognized the name the way you recognize a word from a language you used to speak fluently. Our father's attorney of 30 years. The woman who drafted every version of his will since before I could read. I didn't call her from the plane. I waited until we'd landed, until my sister had stormed ahead through baggage claim without a backward glance, until I was alone in a rental car with the desert light turning everything gold and merciless outside the windshield. Marguerite picked up on the second ring, like she'd been expecting me. "Ren." Her voice was careful in a way lawyers' voices only get when something is wrong. "I was hoping you'd call before the service." My sister filed a false report against me. At the airport. Said I had fake documents. A long pause. Papers shuffling. "That doesn't surprise me as much as it should." "What does that mean?" "It means," she said slowly, "your father changed his will 6 weeks ago. Your sister knows. She's known since the day he signed it." The desert outside blurred slightly. "And she didn't want you here to hear it read." I gripped the wheel. "Ren," Marguerite added, "you need to see this document before the funeral. Tonight." Marguerite's office still smelled the way it had when I was 12, brought along for a quick signing that turned into an hour of coloring in the waiting room. Old paper, cedar, the particular dust of a life spent organizing other people's endings. She slid the folder across the desk without ceremony. "Your father came to me alone. No appointment. Said he'd been watching something for months and finally had proof." I opened it slowly. Bank statements. Transfers from the clinic's operating account into a private LLC registered 18 months ago. My sister's name listed as sole director. Numbers that started small, testing the water, then grew bolder as no one seemed to notice. $200,000 moved in careful increments designed to stay beneath every threshold that might trigger a flag. He found this himself? He found the pattern. I found the paper trail. Marguerite folded her hands. He didn't want to believe it at first. Then he stopped being able to not believe it. I thought of her at the airport, arms crossed, so certain of her own righteousness, calling security on me while quietly bleeding our father's life's work dry. "Does she know you have this?" "No." Marguerite's eyes were steady. "But she'll know very soon. The will reading is tomorrow morning." The funeral home was full by 9, black dresses and lowered voices, the particular performance of grief that happens when people aren't sure how much of it is real. My sister sat in the front row like she belonged there because she did, because grief doesn't check bank statements before it lets someone mourn. I watched her accept condolences with practiced grace, and for one unsteady moment, I almost let myself doubt Marguerite's folder. Almost let myself believe I'd misjudged her. Then I remembered the airport. The TSA officer's hand on my elbow. Her voice, pitched for an audience. "She's using fake documents." Doubt didn't survive that memory long. The reading was scheduled for 2 o'clock, after the burial, in the same conference room where our father had once explained inheritance law to 2 bored teenagers who never imagined they'd need it. My sister sat across from me, composed, checking her phone like this was any other Tuesday. Marguerite began reading. The clinic, the house in Sedona, the trust accounts. Then the amendment, dated 6 weeks prior, our father's shaking signature notarized and witnessed. My sister's phone slipped from her hand and hit the floor. Every asset redirected. Every LLC frozen pending investigation. My name listed as sole executor. She finally looked at me. I didn't look away. She caught me in the hallway afterward, mascara finally cracking, the composure gone. "You don't understand what I was trying to build." "I understand exactly what you were trying to take." She reached for my sleeve. I stepped back. Not cruelly, just clearly, the way you step back from a fire you've already been burned by once. "Dad forgave people," she whispered. "He always forgave. He forgave mistakes," I said. "This wasn't one. You knew every transfer, every threshold you stayed under." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to anymore. The folder had already spoken louder than either of us could. 6 months later, the clinic reopened under its original name, funded and clean, My father's photograph in the lobby beside a small brass plaque. Trust, once broken, still teaches. The investigation closed quietly, her assets seized, no headlines, no spectacle, just consequence, arriving exactly where it belonged. I still fly through that same airport sometimes. I still remember the officer's hand on my elbow, my sister's voice accusing me of being someone I wasn't. She was right about one thing in the end. I wasn't who she thought I was. I was someone stronger,